Who are the judges?
Brayden, if this coffee is bad, I swear to God. Oh, God.
This sounds bad. Are they as bad as
Brayden, what is this?
the candies?
It tastes like, actually what I'm gonna say is too vulgar to be recorded, so I'm just gonna hold it in, but no. So bad. It does look like it's recorded. But I'm glad I experienced that.
Alright, 26 cents.
Hit the start round button so I know that I don't have to come back in here.
How was it laughing?
Okay. Is anyone not ready?
Let me just make it a readable size. Yeah.
Cool.
Advantage 1 is cybernetic control. Welcome to the world order of algorithmic society. In this world, identity is no longer coherent through signification. Instead, moving itself toward the digital, the human is rendered irrelevant beyond its informatic composition. A bundle of complex biological code, identity, sociality, and politics are stripped down to information flows and transmitted along a network of control, turning individuals into individuals who feedback loops of data modes of resistance become iterative data points that are recaptured by racial algorithms and control. We stand now on the edge of non-existence and hallucination of our reality that if I were to acknowledge it, annihilates me. Their abject and objection, my safeguards, the primers of my culture, the question of where to go now follows a line of syllogistic reasoning that maintains the backdrop of a world in which anti-black brutality is ritualized in a sadistic information game. This particular technology of violence generates an ethos of survival used to justify anti-black biometrics. All analysis must challenge cybernetics itself for risk reabsorption. Beller and 18. It is necessary to bring labor theory value up to date. Workers put more value to creation of bodies than they receive in their wages. The value extraction instead of taking place on the internet, whereas taking place anywhere now, the image and code the human, or the laborer is still the source of all value. They weave in structural liberties to a biochip and increase the ubiquitous computational armature that extracts and abstracts its activity, production, and valorization becomes cellular. All commodities rely on the integration of various modes of valorization tethered to financial derivatives. When considering informatic production things, not just of Disney's president, but also the share price of Apple and Google with its tendrils and rare earth mines, factories serving national and geopolitical schools, and a frontier model of intellectual surveillance of blackness, demonstrates technology, racialization, plantation management, monopoly cartels, biometrics, data avails are precisely the modern metrics valuation. They measure the very metabolism of society organized by computational capital. The 2 billion planet that dispossessed are both the condition and result of the computational regime, negotiated codes of race, gender, nation, and class, emerging of operative value, form of species, metabolism, rather than the treadmill of the world computer capital is thus an effective and extended informatic machine to mediate and calculus of social differences, algorithmic management of rights, posit the cosmos as information sets everyone to work generating more information and in the name of sorting it out, and often survival. The history of capital itself is bathed in blood, and contention too is the topic. Plea bargains are the ultimate panoptic instruments. The state is no longer required to prove guilt because defendants are coerced into policing themselves. Just like the invisibility of guards and panoptic power, the uncertainty of trial and accompanying disproportion and punishment allows prosecutors to make defendants submit to their will. The plea bargain regime, likewise a tool of disciplinary power, allows for the autonomous individualization of punishment using criteria that is free from scrutiny. The prisoner's admission of guilt in turn legitimizes the state's exertion of arbitrary power. Systemic inequity seen as racial sentencing disparities can be observed serving a disciplinary function over minorities, yet cannot be specifically identified and therefore cannot be addressed. Sanitization, like panopticism, can be understood as a modality of disciplinary power. This exemplifies the way that the grammar of politics always erases the black perspective of reality. The digital walls of the cybernetic university guard its own subjectivity via rational model of deliberation that always pathologizes black students and is titrated with highly fungible vectors of racism and sexism. We must realize the debate's mode of colonial computation operates via the reduction of black life to a signifier that gets traded within liberal taxonomies of openness. That's Beller 18. Despite the brilliant use of scholars like C. Harman, song contains error transcription and some originally sources, despite the poetic resonance between the horrific and traumatic production of African scholarly and clearly measured halt the cruel numbers of murders and counting lectures and reduction of living language shall find in different numbers we must sound the algorithms and audit the computational and conscious language written by vigorous machinists, eliminated the ellipses, purged of any remainder excess despite those faith and clamors need. The world remind you as God is dead, telos is no more, and computation reigns. Today, real-time financialized network simulation operates on the chart of ones and zeros, increasingly removed from anything historical. The significance of meaning is one-dimensional without content. In the name of efficiency, in the name of shipping the greatest number of science and false container, they decided what comprehended normal meant. They have as Spartan scholars so eloquently schooled their readers that order, with its human sequence written in blood, represents for African and indigenous people a scene of actual mutilation, dismemberment, and exile. What differences might have emerged if the predictability of language had used slave narratives and slave speech toward the psychotic discourse of American grammar? So definitely names the paradigm of unreconstructed American semiotic information that continues to disavow the presence of the historical violence of slavery and simultaneously performs the recapitulation of white supremacy in every possible meaning. Would the autocorrect in your iPhone work differently? Is racism sediments to the architecture of modern machines, both in terms of the original text and in terms of the good subject? The texts themselves are inputs into the associates that affect the outputs. They tend to reproduce their own semiotic architecture. Contention 3 is the undercommons, thus the one you see is radical refusal. Vote affirmative for a politics of black study. You should refuse that which has been refused to you. This is not about being anything in particular. Care will only emerge when we realize the structures we oppose are fucked up for everyone, albeit way worse for certain individuals. We have to leave behind the desire to organize our reality into a programmable fashion. Instead, engage the undercommons is the only way to reclaim agency for minority bodies, seal the functionality of the plea bargaining apparatus to make it collapse upon itself. Thus, the role of the ballot is to decide on the ethicality of the cybernetic university. That's Halstrom. And 13. When we refuse, we create dissonance along study to continue the underground is not wrong. We refuse it's not to end troubles, but rather to end the world that created those troubles. It's one of them is to be opposed to refusal, logic, and stage the absence of plans, a mode of stalling real politics. The mission is to recognize that when you seek to make things better, you're not just doing it for the other, you're also doing it for yourself. While men may think that they are turning feminists and white people think they are opposing racism, no one will be able to tear this shit down until they realize that the structures they oppose are not only bad for some of us, they are really bad for all of us. Your hierarchies are bad for men as well as for women, as well as really bad for the rest of us. The coalition emerges out of your recognition that it's fucked up for you. We must change things or die, all of us. Revolution will come in a form we cannot yet imagine. We prepare now for what will come by entering into study. Learn how to be with and for. You'll also feel fear, concern, and disorientation. Disorientation is necessary because you will no longer be in one location, moving from forward to another. Instead, you will be part of the movement of things. And on this way to the outlet, social life is nothing. It is flight, fugitivity itself. Fugitivity is not only escape. Fugitivity is being separate from settling, being together. And homelessness is not idealized homelessness. Homelessness is a state of dispossession which we seek the undercommon apositionality, which emerges neither from self-consciousness nor knowledge, but also the improvisation that proceeds from somewhere. On the other side of the unasked questions, our fantasies must come from the hold. The hold here is the hold in the slave ship, but also the hold that we have on reality and fantasy, the hold that they have on us, and the hold we decide to forego on each other, preferring instead to touch, to be with, to love.
Good for cross-sex.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about the top paragraph. So I interpret this to mean that symbolic exchange hasn't worked, we can't communicate fully, and it's just incomplete pieces of information. Is that an accurate assessment of that top paragraph?
No, not at all.
Okay, cool. What do you think the top paragraph says then?
The top paragraph is making a prescriptive claim about how power operates in the status quo and the way that the semiotic codification of reality overdetermines what the body is.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. How does it overdetermine what that capacity is?
Yeah, so our argument, as per the Beller evidence, describes this in relationship to the racial history of slavery and those things, and the way that in the drive for productivity, we excluded the grammar of the slave from the construction of language, which is why when we think through things and
sure, I guess my next question
when
then,
we think through things to the modern
I'm
archetype
going to ask another question.
Right.
It says that identity, sociality, and politics have been stripped down information flows that are transmitted along a network of control, turning individuals into individuals into feedback via loops. That just seems to be an information overload claim. Like, this app is disclosed on your this app is disclosed on your wiki as Baudrillard. You've defended this as Baudrillard before. It just feels like you're shifting out of different arguments that you've gone for before, and I want to know how to respond to this app.
I've never defended this as Baudrillard. The reason why it's marked as Baudrillard on the wiki is because it proves a point about how people care more about labels and the symbolic meanings that we attach to things rather than the content.
Okay, I'm gonna move on then.
Alright.
So the I guess the advocacy. Do you defend a hypothetical world in which the USFG does abolish the
Not hypothetical, but yeah.
What does that mean?
What do you mean?
Do you defend a world in which the USFG abolishes plea bargaining?
Yes, just not hypothetically.
What does that mean?
We will build the communities to take down the plea bargaining apparatus.
Okay, but the
Yeah.
United States, okay, but the undercommon says like we should not work within the state. We should have our own like modes of politics, etc. So,
Well, it's not that like we
so
should
you
never.
do not defend the United States federal government.
It's not that we should never engage with institutions, but a kind of prior question to that is just to say that we must understand the way in which our politics are overcoded by semiotics before we can have effective solutions to problems that aren't always like controlled by whiteness. Our argument is that
Wait. So the aft claim is that you do an analysis, and then after that analysis, sometime in the future, the USFG could then abolish plea bargaining.
well, it's not that the USFG should or could abolish plea bargaining, but rather that our argument is just that like we're not mutually exclusive with engaging the state per se, but rather before we can do that, we need to have hope and energize our communities in terms of faith in one another beyond symbolic representation and what it means to be a certain identity category.
I'm going to take a little bit. Uh, 4:15. Two octaves. Is everyone good? Two off case. Case, it'll be like a lot of arguments, so I might suggest filling in on another sheet. Someone good?
Yeah.
As the interpretation of the affirmative must defend the implementation of abolition of plea bargaining in the United States federal government abolishments necessitates implementations about any effective enactment or whether new agents effective something such as the law to do with holding something to abolish a law. You should hold the line on this. They were pretty clear in cross-examination saying that it's not necessarily that they do things. If you're unclear about the violation, if they didn't read a single card about plea bargaining in the act, that's the reason why they link into all of our arguments about fairness. For the net benefit versus fairness, one to me is a game at first what is it lose competitive norms determine if improve alternative impacts of activism where education can be presented other firms of big fairness. The most important impacts are not different. The topic is not fair. A preparation repractice of practice a huge chance that they can prepare for safe on issues like attractions by surprise preparation. It's better than thinking on your free research demonstrates pedagogical humility research skills that are only portable debate training and be limits. There are a finite number of government restrictions, but the infinite number of non-topical firms consider this our library just not debated the topic allows someone to specialize in one area of the library for 4 years and giving them a huge other number of people who switch side research focus every 2 months, specifically true in the context of thereafter where they're like we should think about things through X lens before we do the topic, which would still link into our offense because they make the resolutional offense irrelevant to their strategy, which still links in and see really can't put up on the case out which because of the lack of preparation prevents rigorous testing of the AC claims we wait for would have to outweigh the other impacts of TV abolishment grading as a first step up to establish the undercommons, which is their own topical version of the app arguments that they made in their speech. And also you should hold them to the plan text. No part of it said that they will do any part of plea bargaining. It's just that they should do the undercommons and have a politics of black study and refusal, none of which are something that are predictable. You should hold the line on this argument and vote on theory that excludes our ability to have the debate in the first place. It's a prior question also competing interpretation because reasonability rights arbitrary judgment based on private breath and argumentation nowhere via incentivized debates go on down theory debated with the practice is killing some to clash and all other flows and also they're illogical because that would just justify reverse RVS, which doesn't make sense when logic comes first because it indicts our ability to make arguments in the first place. Next up. Their form of politics has been empirically disastrous for the left as a form of folk politics, which replaces the political and collective with cultural and personal circle. And Williams 15. Most marketers in Morocco were yet to go ahead and plan to resist and rapidly of things, replaced by apathy. G20 featured protective marching orders and anti-capitalist stipulations. Montesquieu goes when demands can be just adult. They usually feel moves that aim to achieve their transformation and participate there. Raise the question of when these sequences might pay up the affect of the side of the politics, I mean, more abstract analyses, these impulses will lead to deeply perverse effects of it. Raising huge amounts of money at the expense of the money raised actually extended the Civil War, causing the payment passion for effective analysis of risk becoming an illimitedly driven circuit for effective action. And politics becomes to be about feelings masking absence of strategic gains. The recent weakness of the left must accept that when key problem is uncritical acceptance of folk political thinking and skip the next link card. Capitalism guarantees exploitation, extinction, and inequality harms hundreds of millions of poor people. Coin 17. Poverty, increasing global and equal distribution of wealth and power is the basis for democratic structure to be captured by elites and that first place carbon exchange and ecosystem collapse and antimicrobial resistance and violence presents an existential threat to humanity and sustainable consumption, ecologically mediated structural violence, destroying the oppressive of future generations and harming millions of poor people. Economic models are vital to systemic change, but they're changeable only if they're driven by demands from the ground. And the alternative is a party embracing collectivity in the face of nihilism and faced problems with previous lessons organisms while not stating the state to the right. Dean. Number 16. The P Party didn't record the political process of something the seeds left think that we have to leave it all together. The left went from right now make a party that's not repressive less embracing cultural individualism capitalist style saying everyone should just do their own thing. It's just going in the direction of dominant culture. Identity politics can now code for because it denies the impact of what do people what do black and white people say we don't want to live in a society based on exploitation of BPE as an unique example individuals and kills occupy from the start rhetoric of horrizontalism over individuals and what start to happen is that people looking how to their exact experience are not being recognized. The goal is to overthrow capital build a communist society as capitalism crumbles. We want to have actual equality, use the tools we have to bring down the masters, how to occupy, asserted a collectivity through division. This is how conflict collectivity is collectivity of us against that. Yeah. 1. The top of the case is the assertion about how the world operates without any reason or data about why. So the truth one will do the same thing, but if they do use syllogistic reasoning to justify the theory, they demonstrate themselves because they say that's bad, and they have an exchange what they do is different from what they criticize. If you can deduce their worldview from ours, you should vote negative. The role of battle should be to vote for the side who endorses the best strategy, that votes for the strategy that best leads to the best material consequence, and anything else is self-serving, arbitrary. Second, fugitivity is a flawed method of political engagement. It makes neoliberal violence inevitable, which is another link to the critique. Love 15. Moon and a cardinal for Marinage. Their imagination is indebted to the inside. Their account of the other comments reads like a rapture of traditional topics of deviance. Studies it is important to consider the limits of the refusal of the strategy critique can be outweighed and enforced as statistical, but also way of acknowledging what's institute's position of real differences between the inside and the political anti-normativity of it is difficult to adjust. Their implication is the violence and the knowledge protection side. Violence and inevitable undertaking such work will allow you to skip into a radically different relation because we're in contemporary instantiation, and to deny our implications in existing structure is also a form of violence. 3. The one I see is a source of fragmented polemic. They heavily discounted Larkin 18. The messages represents a less culmination of research and more of a fist-first attempt to disperse threats and Pelly's book is fragmented as an approach to develop the topic before quickly moving on. He neglects them to mention any example. His arguments are realist and the historical record are more in polemic. He coins out provocative terms without delving too deeply in how these terms may be concisely developed. Therefore, the affirmative is a performative double turn, and it turns outweighs their performance, and they should lose their impacts are about communication. Rely on, I'm the most clever person in the room, but defaults into narcissism because they can't sell their own events. They flew across the country to beat her right off computer spread. Respect speech time to ask for the ballot. Their form is worse and further embraces sort of meta politics instead of organizing to change the world. They critique from a cynical distance, which turns all of their arguments. Skip the 5-1 that stick no impact to horizontal on injury doesn't determine identity. Injury becomes a critical part of a challenging oppression. CV. Okay. We can announce the injury to an identity without being wrapped by them. In fact, identity can be public without being a claim on one side. Timeless is an essential nature without being serving as a narcissistic attachment to one's victim. No identity comes are important part of political resistance and necessary step. Challenge their relations of repression and domination. And 7. Their view of politics is about totalizing even for realize that technology of discipline were all about governmentality comes a variety of ways that problematize the action of the individual distances himself from the view that the power of life is ambiguously nefarious and not all forms of discipline are bad. Things like anti-religion laws that racism are bad. Gun control instead of prove that discipline power can be good. They're just making an analogy between really bad forms of discipline power like the penal system and debate. And it's a shallow analogy because they rely on information and hold the line. They've read analytics about a way to explain the world that their authors would have spent hundreds of pages justifying. You should be skeptical of their claims if they are just sort of analytical arguments. Next argument is that they will try to get up in the next speech and shift out of a bunch of arguments. You should hold the line on these arguments. It is a question of what sort of vision of the world or model of politics they try to defend. Their authors are all disparate with one another, and they have not presented a positive vision of the world or what it means to vote affirmative, and that should frame how you vote. What is the impact to the 1AC? The answer is just resentiment, which we've answered they don't have a coherent vision of the world, and they definitely don't defend the topic.
Are you good?
Yep.
What's a coherent vision of the world?
Okay, so our argument is that you have to you have to have like a vision of what it means to vote affirmative, basically.
So like black study and black care for one another is not a coherent vision?
Sure, so my argument is that when I asked you about the 1AC,
So
your argument, no,
this
can I
is just a
finish?
diversion.
This is,
No,
I'm
no,
gonna
it's fine.
finish this answer. When
Alright.
I asked you about the 1AC, it was entirely different from the way that your arguments presented themselves, which were all terms of art
What?
in Baudrillard, but also,
Terms
it's,
of art and like what?
okay, I could go, well, that's what the beginning of Crossix was, and
What?
then you were like, oh, I'm not gonna defend Baudrillard anymore, which is fine.
Anymore? When
That's
did I
cool.
ever defend Baudrillard?
But my argument is that the
No,
1AC, my argument,
answer my question. When did I ever defend
a
Baudrillard?
lot of the arguments in the 1AC are
Like
super
what?
similar to
I need
Baudrillard.
examples. Super similar, so everything's
So-
the same now?
No, not everything is the same. I read you lines that I thought sounded like Baudrillard in the 1AC Crossix. You said no.
I didn't know
and
black
then I
people
didn't
couldn't
even.
have similar ideas. Like,
Baudrillard, not a black person. Just want to throw that out there.
yeah, because I
Second
didn't read
argument-
Baudrillard.
Second argument is, our argument is that a lot of times apps are shifty and that you should hold the line.
Why are you
That's
so
all.
why are you so suspicious of the app being shifty?
Why am I suspicious? Because
Yeah, why?
it's not because of the arguments you read, it's just because of the way I've watched you debate before.
When have you watched me read this app?
Not this app. I've watched you debate like 3 or 4 times reading arguments that I can.
When I was actually reading Baudrillard.
Okay.
And this is not Baudrillard.
Our argument is that this
I'm
is,
asking why would you
But-
assume it's the same thing?
okay, this is like completely diversionary. The only
Nick,
implication
you're
of
the
this
one being
argument-
diversionary.
I don't really know how that's true considering I read
Alright.
like at least
Like you just
six,
like,
I
dropped
read
the
at
app
least
too,
6.
so it's just like
I'm sure I dropped the app after reading 3 minutes of
yeah, I mean they were
pictures,
all
but that's fine.
non-responsive, but all right.
Really, that one card
Yeah,
was
the
exactly
TVA,
about the Beller
how is that-
card.
Yeah, it's like a comment. All right, the TVA.
Okay,
How is
like,
this different from the
I
app?
don't know why you're acting like a victim right now. The which card?
The
TVA?
Yeah, why is that different from what the app is?
It's distinct from what the app is because the app was kind of shifty in Crossix and said that you wouldn't really defend the USFG getting
I was
rid of
literally
plea
like, we build communities to take down the plea bargaining apparatus.
That is distinct from the United States federal
All right,
government.
so the plea bargaining requires the USFG. Why?
So we read a definition card.
All right, and
Like, are you asking about our limit, like our fairness offense? I don't understand what's your question.
I'm asking why the TVA has to be with the USFG.
Because our interpretation of the topic is that the United States federal government.
Why
has
is that
to
good?
do it.
Like, why is that different from just like TVA without the USFG?
Well, there are a couple of embedded arguments within the T-shell that were written out, but our argument is that affirmatives that are like, oh, in the future, maybe someday we could get rid of plea bargaining, but don't center their analysis based on it is necessary to affirm you have to prove that the 1AC or that plea bargaining is bad and should be abolished by the USFG links it to our offense because you can still be like, X field of study that I did research on for 3 or 4 years is the most important thing, and you can pseudo defend
Alright,
the topic,
wait,
but
I have
that
a
doesn't meet our
question then.
interpretation.
Alright, so since like this is just like some X field of pseudo study, if I did like
Didn't call it pseudo study.
USFG, like what if I added like the words USFG to the app, what ground would you have gotten that you don't have right now?
Okay, cool. So if you defended the hypothetical enactment of the resolution, we could have read generic disads that have
Like
unique
what?
dissent, so that have
Like what?
uniqueness that apply right now,
Can you give
and
me
that
a
we would have
list?
had
A
those
list.
stable.
I want a list.
Do you want me to go into my Dropbox and read every
You should
single dissad?
probably
I
know
like?
what your dissats
Yeah, sure.
are.
Terra
Alright, now
dissad,
stop.
econ
Yeah.
dissad,
Econ
the
dissad
crash
is
the
great.
system, the crash the
Why
system
does that require
dissad.
the okay, crash the system, econ, what else?
I can go through them. Let me just pull up my positions, and I will go through all of them that I like reading.
Why does it matter
The
what-
Butler counterplan, the PVC counterplan, the sexual assault counterplan, the Trump negative, which is like the Trump dissad with Mueller, a bunch of case turns. We read the destituent power critique, which is also a good topical argument.
Cool.
We read the CAPK with links specific to plea bargaining a lot of the time. We read
Specific
different,
links. Alright, sure, whatever.
like I can keep going, like the Dropbox is
No,
pretty
I'm
big.
okay. Yeah, of course it is. stop prop 239.
There's just one card.
Yep. Alright, so.
Give me a sec, I'm putting it in a doc. Okay, you can go.
What's the order?
Case KT. Four. Okay. Is anyone not ready? Cool.
This cybernetic categorization of reality operates via the coding of minorities, such as black debaters are expected to read Wilderson in the name of efficiency and productivity, reduce slaves to a mere number that were shipped like cargo. This sustains a global white supremacist imagery that is the basis for all discrimination. Vote affirmative to endorse a form of black study that embraces blackness beyond representation in order to scramble the code of anti-black deliberative processes. This fugitive process creates fear and disorientation within systems of power, which is necessary to foster revolutionary politics and an ethos of care which can cause us to form movements that hijack the apparatus of plea bargaining. They say syllogistic reasoning is a double turn. No, our argument is about the specificity and the way that institutions utilize syllogistic reasoning to attach particular anti-black tropes to blackness, which is how the semiotic codification of reality operates, which is why specificity is key here. We agree with your old valid. However, you have to first consider your relationship to the cybernetic university. Otherwise, debaters are allowed to wash away their own shame and complicity and violence in this space. In this space, which is net more proximate to your ballot, which is something that matters and allows anti-black practices to continue within debate, such as examples of pathology listed at the top of that was above. You say fugitivity is bad. This is about Harney's theory of Hardy Halstrom is saying our app is more than just fugitivity. It's about building revolutionary politics, to learning to care, to become part of the movement of things, which is to engage the other commons as an apositionality, that allows us to value each other beyond the symbolic representations of what we think it means to be a certain identity category. You say fragmented polemic. This card is probably just worth discarding because it probably didn't even read Beller's book. You say it can't impact things, you can't make the impact things, no impact the result, not relevant to the affirmative because the specificity is key. Specificity answers a bunch of these arguments. You say anti-lynching laws. Our argument is that not never engaged with the law or something like that, but rather that we can repurpose liberal institutions for black use. We are not Afro-pessimism, which means that we don't disagree with this, but rather we have to question why these things, why certain anti-black norms exist in the status quo. First, your Beaujard answers are also not responsive. Go to the critique. Top-level thesis argument: capitalism has fundamentally changed from the production of labor to the consumption of science that operates through the whiteness standard, the gold standard, with reference money. Money became a detached signifier, which means that the alternative can never take into account the racial algorithms of society. And the cybernetic university DA developer evidence extended the alternative dialectical power response to neoliberalism guarantees anti-black coalitions because they assume the psychotic grammar of American politics that doesn't deconstruct the notions of what it means to be black, and only thinking about blackness as unintelligibility can challenge racial capitalism, which means that permutation do both shields the link because we aren't mutually exclusive with politics. That was on the case page as well, which means case page as well. You see in permutation do both also means permutation. Yeah, that's fine. Next. Absent the affirmative, politics will follow semiotic code that's inherently anti-black. I mean the affirmative plea bargaining via bottom-up policies that refuse to see the CJ as counter-interpretation. The actually critique plea bargaining guarantees net ground like plea bargaining code, reform counter-interpretation. The resolution has to engage the other comments as a way of thinking through the plea bargaining apparatus. Our interpretation is affirmed that allows DC-centered deliberation. Every other debate is not just a question of whether the app is a key corrective next side bias justifies the broader topic. Frame the entire framework debate through this card. App researchers anti-black state of the world, rhetoric of blackness functioning in liberal politics. Spheres rely on anti-black policy using the laws dependent on the deconstruction of black life. That's whole A16. Applications of freedom, equity, and uphold white liberal sensitivities regard elevating black lives to outside only white sensitivity matters should be defended at all times. Freedom, justice, equity are predicated on politics. Exclusion denied address the question of race to mass reality. Black subjects outside the register of equity. The liberal facade politics are pushed in the way that white liberal sensitivities are advanced. Black subjects should not be located with the white liberal register and a register its own cybernetic university. They attempt to pin down possibilities and control the way blackness can and cannot occur is the attempt to mastery and criminalization of otherness, which traps black subjects in a cycle of pain. As an agency, they allow bureaucracy to be well prepared prepared opponent else must ground. You can never adapt for pessimism, psychoanalysis, solution, Marxism, or even plea bargaining. Good CX I would defend. I would defend a bottom-up policy in the community formation that challenges plea bargaining, which means that we solve all of your groundless because none of it is intrinsic to the actor. Fairness is just an internal link to education. Truth testing is cybernetic control because power operates through the reduction of blackness to predictable categories. An unpredictable model of dialogue is better.
I had 450. Okay. Learner will be T, quickly, the app, and the critique. T quickly, then the critique, or then the app, then the critique. Everyone good? We're not going for taking the office on this page is relevant. They concede no RVIs and the rule about is just to determine the material consequences, which means that they have no offense. The app page. There are a couple arguments we'll go for on this page. The first argument will move to the critique page, which is the Love 15 card, which will answer their arguments. But the one card that we'll go for on this page is the Larkin 18 card. It's really good. First of all, it is directly citing Beller's book and describes the way that they understand the world is bad and their epistemology is bad. This card was not responded to the last speech besides a little scoff and saying, haha, you probably didn't even read Beller's book. If we win a risk that their epistemology is bad, they do not get to make claims about how they describe the world accurately, about cybernetics, or why the discussion of the app was productive writ large. Epistemology should take this argument out, and you should hold the line on 2AR responses to this argument. The first argument it makes is that they tried to get together disparate threads together and just kind of mush together different forms of analyses, but they are both ahistorical and also fragmented because Beller does not have an intent to create a coherent theory, but rather to create sort of a fantastical scholarship where it's just about a production of those words and of those knowledge forms, which is bad. They do not want to describe the world, and they don't attempt to make a coherent theory of the world, which is a critical distinction and is a reason why they should not be able to win cybernetics arguments. They also are completely ahistorical, but all of their arguments are reliant on the construction of blackness throughout time, which should be a disqualifier for their understanding of the world. And also the last argument is that they are intentionally vague and only set up starting points and sort of ways that we could understand the world, but are not built upon accurately enough or robustly enough to have a real description of how cybernetics creates blackness, etc., which means you should give them 0 to 5% risk of their arguments being true. Seriously, this should not be a conceded argument. If their epistemology is bad and they're trying to make arguments about why the world or why you should vote app because their description of the world is good and pedagogically valuable, you should just vote negative because they have not done that and they have not defended their robust theory of the world. So vote neg on presumption. The critique. The critique turns and outweighs the case of capitalism guarantees extinction, exploitation. We value people as means to an end, which creates a perpetual drive for war and our need to destroy the other, which is an explanation for blackness, and it means that we should win, and which means if we win a link to the affirmative, that's sufficient for you to pull the trigger on the capitalism critique. Extinction independently outweighs it. It is caused by warming, and it is a slow process of death for billions of people, which should outweigh. They said that they will concede that it's a question of material consequences. Their only argument against this is that it's a question of the cybernetic universe and it's a proximity to your ballot. But ask yourself, what does you understanding blackness do for people who are dying because they are wage slaves in Qatar, etc.? Our argument is that there are important things outside of the round, and individual judges who are in positions of at least relative privilege do not produce material consequences for these people, which proves that they have not met roll the ballot arguments, and a risk that we can solve capitalism should resolve all of these. The alternative. They do not get a permutation. A permutation is a test of competitiveness between policy options. The model doesn't make sense in a debate where it's two amorphous philosophical positions because you can't really tie them down to anything. They can always explain why the abstract certain things they said are compatible with Marxism, but that just begs the question of why they included the rest. And statement that everyone's their advocacy, they should initiate a debate without a plan, and thus have forgotten the right to have a plan-focused style argument. They can't pick and choose which parts of the advocacy to include in the permutation. We wouldn't link to anything that should be sufficient to vote negative. Permutation should be evaluated from a risk perspective. So they often even that they can't explain why there often is a reason to prefer the permutation, but there's no reason to risk it. The case is an advantage to when evaluating a permutation, because if we win a premise of the link, their advocacy is counterproductive. This is a situation where the permutation can shield the link, and if they win a permutation, then the alternative should just go away, and then it's just a disadvantage to the 1AC. The central premise is that they haven't defended a policy option, even if it could lead to a policy option. That is our point. Permutations arose because there is plan versus plan debate, but this does not exist in their model of debate. They should not get a permutation. No new arguments against this. It was something they should have made in the last speech. the we explain whiteness argument. The fluidity of whiteness can be explained by capitalism, that racial hierarchies are maintained to stabilize the social order and naturalize inequality. These norms are influenced by current social orders that are propelled by capitalism. Read 13. Risk and stress of populations and groups that are stressed into hierarchies and ideologies. Age groups different and helps to stabilize the social order by legitimizing its hierarchies with the privilege and natural order ideology become generally assumed as self-evident and imposed by the lot of the concept where they're convergent and within reinforce and invest interest in a powerful strata. The significance of racialization, regularly over time in relations changing political and economic condition race, in particular class confederate schemes have very substantial race have been a matter of much more fluid than our suggestion. The notions which affect races are fundamentally problematic. These beliefs system reference to the legitimization of concrete patterns of social relations in a particular context. You should prefer evidence on specificity. It tries to answer the question which explains what, whereas they've just made analytics that their cards don't even contend, which outweighs it. Also, this person has literally spent their entire lives discussing capitalism versus race. So you should highly prefer evidence. The link debate. Our links are twofold. Their first argument is the affect argument. That affect are sort of a focus on individual identitarian politics is ineffective to articulate strategies and demands because it devolves into apathy because it's just outbursts of emotions or feelings, and then people feel as though they've done something or articulated something and move on, which proves that the permutation cannot solve because people will move on after because they feel like they've done something productive. The terminal defense of the case, which proves the undercommon fails. And the second argument we'll go for is the love card that we read on the case. This argument is really good. It talks about the way that people, when they view the undercommons, they view themselves as a fugitive of one structure, but they are actually completely implicated in another structure, which is particularly true in the context of neoliberalism, where a lot of black people are implicated in structures of neoliberalism, but they absolve themselves of that guilt because they feel like they're fugitives in another system, which means there's a trade-off decide to the permutation that people are like, oh, we're fugitives, so we no longer have to fight neoliberalism.
Wait, how much did I have? Someone already done. I had like 3 something, I think.
It was 2.
2? Okay.
It was like 2:30 something. If you want to take 2:30.
Yeah, I'll do 2:30. Not bad. Start. Be the case and the day. Is anyone not ready?
This is only a debate about debate and ethicality, the relationship to the cybernetic university and debate, which means that evaluating the criticism is not of your concern. They've conceded a framing argument by you should prioritize impacts that are approximate to the ballot, i.e. the pathologization of black debaters in this space, how people are expected to read Wilderson because of the color of their skin. This is the kind of way in which the cybernetic university and the cybernetic codification of reality overcodes what we expect the other to do. This is the way in which the politics operationalizes this stuff here and now. They've conceded that when we don't forefront this discussion, we allow debaters to wash away their shame and complicity in the violence that we are all part of, in the way that we treat one another here and now in our communities, which is the only thing that you can actually affect through an affirmative ballot. Represents an embracement of blackness as beyond representation as something unintelligible that brings anxiety to systems of power like debate, like this one. To affirm it and center it in our scholarship is the only thing that you can actually do with your agency. Ironically, this internal link towards every argument that went for on the criticism at a different level, because they are the ones that absolve themselves of the guilt of being part of neoliberal universities by saying that we can fiat away our problem, i.e. debaters washing away their guilt, like the alternative without actually doing anything. Only the affirmative focuses on a mode of politics, a mode of being, in the world that isn't dominated by capitalist informatics through a rejection and a radical refusal of the cybernetic codification of reality, which is the only solvency mechanism available to blackness in the status quo, which means that their politics are either anti-black or exclusionary. It's the reason why you should heavily prefer an alternative. Now, I'll go to their arguments first. This Larkin at 18 evidence is seriously terrible. Like, seriously, read it and then read the Beller evidence, then tell me you tried to vote on it. No, you can't, because it literally just says that there were no examples. However, obviously the first piece of Beller at 18 evidence begins with a lineage of the way the Zong slave ship and the way that it was translated and mistranslated into story, and the way that the slaves were thrown overboard just like cargo in the name of efficiency and productivity, which proves that we do have epistemological backing for a theory, and these are mostly just add-ons attached to someone who just didn't get the book. It is not a reason to vote negative, and either way, we are an intersection between Beller's theory and Halstrom, which means that there should be enough defense for you to vote affirmative there. Now go to the criticism. I don't need to go for the permutation as long as I win some of the framing arguments on the other page about how black people are pathologized in the status quo, and about the way we view one another, i.e. who's hired to coach what arguments, and by the way people strike all black judges. These are all examples of pathology here. They say they're all the link arguments first. We aren't a politics of affect, because our argument isn't identitarian necessarily, but rather about the structure of blackness as a semiotic category, and it has been that way. Obviously it does affect black people, but that doesn't make it identitarian. This is a reductionism and pathologization of the one I see. Also, the love card isn't responsive because they've conceded a distinction, because this is also victim blaming, because obviously it's racist to say that it's black people's fault for being part of neoliberal structures, and there's no reason in the context of our relationship to debate why it doesn't link to them too. The affirmative is the only thing that can do something about it through an engagement and centering of black scholarship.